Good afternoon, and thanks very much for having us as part of the program today. As Michael mentioned, some of the work that we've been doing over the last 12 months, it's been interesting. When you have a milestone like an annual conference, you look back to what happened last year, what was meant to happen in the ensuing year, and how much of it did. It's probably a mixed report card, but there's been certainly some progress, and I'll touch on some of those as we go through. Probably the big difference is that for the first time in Australia's history since your last conference in February this year, a heavy vehicle national law was introduced, and what that means is that for the first time in Australia's history, you've got exactly the same words on the one statute that's applied in the participating states and territories, not their own previous interpretations of it. So it's like the source of the legislative river, if you like, that if you have inconsistent words, then inevitably you're going to get inconsistency at the roadside, which is not what you want. So we're keen to make sure that we go about our business in a way that improves your business, and our brief is really to facilitate, innovate and regulate, and some of the initiatives that we've got in place to give us some certainty to do that have been the approval of the budget for 2014 and 15. As Michael said in his opening remarks, both the National Transport Commission and ourselves are reliant on federal and state governments for funding. Progressively, when there's a national registration scheme, there'd be an ongoing source of funding for the national regulator from that, but I'll speak to that in a moment later on. So we're looking to build a whole of organisations functions to deliver on that brief of productivity, efficiency and safety as well. I'll turn to some of the specific measures here now. Fatigue management is one that has a lot of interest to you. Advanced fatigue management, there are a number of bus operators in our advanced fatigue management option. We'd certainly like more. So what we're doing to try and get that make it more appealing is that we're taking steps to make that more accessible and also more effective. So what we recently did, because the accreditation arrangements for those bus operators and truck operators, but also anyone in the advanced fatigue management scheme, have an expiry date. So we recently contacted those people and have commenced working with those participants, assessing documents, and in some cases visiting operators at their depots to better understand how things work at the practical level. These operators have not been compelled into making major changes to their business just to meet the new AFM arrangements. And in the assessments that we've done to date, the operators have been able to show how their day-to-day business practices protect their drivers from fatigue. Probably the big change that we're in the process of doing now, there'll be a suite of these eventually, and the first one will be rolled out later this year, is a series of templates. So rather than you as individual operators needing to engage a fatigue management expert, consultant that might cost you tens of thousands of dollars to find out whether you can or can't put something in place, if there's a template available on our website, then you can quickly assess whether it's worth you making that sort of investment in your business, whether you can do your own business assessment as to whether you're going to get the flexibility that you need for your business. So those tailored solutions, that means that anyone who signs up for those will be signing up for the highest level of training and fatigue management to get that done. Another building block in that fatigue management space is the Fatigue Expert Reference Group. So that has recently been refreshed, and there'll be some new appointments made to that there. And it's going to provide the basis for decisions from the previous committee of government representatives who were given the difficult job of trying to make determinations upon fatigue management issues and trying to determine what kind of management system an operator should be asked to have. So that's the fatigue management side of thing there. The next one on work diaries, I can tell you that we're making progress with a request for flexibility from BIC and your state associations on the requirement to complete a work diary, and we've sought additional detailed information needed to advance that request. So we're planning some changes to how we manage work diary exemptions, and during the internal review of our processes, We're not currently progressing any new work diary exemptions. We're focusing on getting things right so that when we do them, that'll be better for your businesses. So there's when the review is complete and the requested information comes back from BIC, then we'll be able to consult further on the likely timetable for a decision there. And I should emphasise as well that that's a piece of work, like much of the work that Jeff spoke to, where there's some joint cooperation between ourselves and the National Transport Commission. Rounding off rest breaks is a sometimes sensitive issue in terms of the completion of work diaries. At the last meeting of Transport Ministers in May, it was decided to put on hold any work on that matter and asked the National Transport Commission to develop a plan to gather some data on that. So Marcus, I think we'll touch on that a little bit later on. There was a business case on this presented to the recent meeting of Chief Executives only a few weeks ago for that data project, and that's really the next step in that work. Counting time, that's one of those ones as well that there have been differences over time, but depending where that one's at is depending on the progress and the outcomes of the joint project between ourselves and the NTC. A paper may be put to Chief Executives and Ministers recommending that the law be amended to clarify that a relevant major rest break means the longest continuous rest break required in a given period for each work and rest hours module. So that's going to give you some clarity compared to what you have now. So, and that will most likely, if that does get approval, be put onto the work program for maintenance. Emergency and unplanned services, the short story with those ones there is that after that was endorsed by ministers a few years back as a medium-term priority, potential harmonisation of that is certainly the long-term goal, but jurisdictions continue to debate the possibility of making how those arrangements might work. But what we've done is the arrangements that did exist prior to the heavy vehicle law coming in New South Wales and Victoria, they have been preserved under a notice, and other jurisdictions are pretty much working through what arrangements they may have. I'll just turn to performance-based standards now. This one, it's certainly a potential solution to opening up a lot of the road network access to more buses. The applications are growing. I guess the short message that I'd like to leave with you on performance-based standards today is that while there was, and it's still on our agenda to undertake a review of the performance-based standards rules from the perspective of making them more accessible for buses, while that work is yet to progress, I had a look at the numbers. So since we took on this function in early 2013, there's actually been 12 bus designs approved, which has actually led to 43 PBS buses being put into service. So there's certainly some progress there as well. The project brief is on the blocks, just awaiting funding. We've got some input from BIC, and thank you, Michael, for your contribution to that. The issue, the other way where PBS could be a potential opener to get broader access is on some of those issues such as the 2.55 metre wide buses. So it's a potential pathway there. There's a vehicle that's going through the PBS assessment there at the moment. So, but it's part of the larger issue around wider buses being built and their desirability and applicability in Australia. So our position at the moment is that anyone who wants to put an application forward for a PBS for a bus that fits outside of the vehicle standards dimensions, we'll assess that on its merits on a case-by-case basis. So the other part of that, of course, is any performance-based standards access that's opened up. It's to a defined access area. It's not general access. So we want to get. What we're doing at the moment is we want to get the legislative mechanism by which we bring that into place set and done in a modular way, so that when a design is approved, rather than operators having to go back to square one and apply for each access on its case, we'll have laid the groundwork for that in a modular way, and that's what we're doing now. And we're working closely with BIC on what sort of mechanism. It's the wiring, if you like, for what benefits you might get in practical effect down the track. And we're working very closely with Vic on that one. Mass and loading, I know that Jeff touched on that there, so there's really no more that I can add. I had it in my slides because it's a joint piece of work there. So that one, consultation's continuing with Vic, and ultimately we want to get to a place where we have harmonised arrangements across the country. That's certainly our goal. On compliance and enforcement, I'll turn this one around a little bit there. Our budget is $135 million a year, of which about 70% is spent on compliance and enforcement, so the services that states and territories provide for us. So it sort of puts it in perspective when you look at that there. So to swing those dot points around, what do we do with that money? Well, the focus is on strategic management, getting consistency, effectiveness, risk targeting, enforcement services that effectively give you the same treatment no matter what the circumstances. And that's a journey. As Jeff hinted in his presentation, some of the magic and mystery of the Federation can sometimes be a frustration for us as well as yourselves, but we're very focused on getting as much consistency as possible. So should move on to the next one now. Vehicle inspections. In terms of what our brief is, those 3 dot points at the top there kind of clarify that. So we look after and are responsible for what's inspected, how and where inspections will be conducted, and also monitoring the inspection outcomes in line with the prescribed vehicle standards. There's 2 core pieces of work that we're doing within that brief at the moment that I'll just touch on. The first one to do with competency of people conducting a heavy vehicle inspection, that the NHVR has agreement at officer level across the states and territories to adopt the National Heavy Vehicle Inspection Manual from March next year. So that interfaces, as Jeff suggested, with the roadworthiness standards as well. So once that's, the next step is to gain endorsement of that at a senior level, and once we achieve that, then we'll lay the groundwork for introducing that, and including communication with industry on what that might mean there too. That manual is used in accordance with the individual inspection regimes, so that they differ more for heavy vehicles, because I know under the passenger transport legislation that you have that there are the 6 monthly requirements and such that, as Jeff said, the truck sector does not have that. But the other one is on the roadworthiness program. I won't talk on that because Jeff's covered that quite extensively. Registration, as I mentioned, the heavy vehicle law provides for a registration scheme. The simple part is that those provisions haven't been switched on yet, and ministers are yet to decide when that will happen, but that sets up certainty for us to keep delivering consistency for you. That's really what it comes down to. Until that time, the states and territories continue to administer the registration schemes as they always have. So there's no change there for the moment. Heavy vehicle access, just to let you know where things are at with that. That's a part of our business that didn't go so well, I'll be honest, when the law was switched on in February this year. But there's a dedicated remediation program in place to set that right, with a focus on building some stable long-term permitting functions there. And the various elements of that you can see before you. I won't read them out, but there's very specific elements of that are starting to turn around and stabilise that part of the business. So that's going a lot better than it was as well. There's some work with the states and territories I should acknowledge as well there, that cooperation has helped a lot to get that stabilised. The way that that's structured at the moment is that the issue of those permits is done via delegation under the law. So for intrastate trips, those applications are lodged with the relevant state authority. How am I going for time, Michael? All good? Yep. Okay. Yep. Okay. I'll skip over these ones here. That's just a graphic that gives you a good summary of the timeline that we've got there. In the interest of time, I'll move on, but that's just a summary there. So you can see the ministers' meeting coming up in November is a big one for certainly a progress report as to where the business case is at. That's just more. Skip over that. This is just a bit of an indication of the sort of thing that we're starting to do is within each state. That's an example of New South Wales, obviously, where we can map the density of the applications that we see for the various access permits that we get. Where that's helpful, you might wonder what's the big deal with that. Well, essentially what it does is help us to know where the business demand is so that we can then use that to inform infrastructure bids and remove bottlenecks on the road network. That's essentially what it comes down with. Some of the areas that we're working with the states and territories on as well, broadly across our business: compliance, data sharing, accreditation, pre-approvals. That's with local governments, particularly given that that's often, where when you drive out the gate of your depot, that's more than likely going to be a local government road. So we've had great success, in fact almost nearly 500 pre-approval and gazette requests that mean that when a permit application comes in, it gets turned around faster. So that's a good part of the work as well. Going forward, just two quick slides on this, is growing the capability across the organisation, continual improvement to facilitate, innovate and regulate, so the adventurous as well as the bread and butter, to deliver on that access remediation program, which, as those slides said, would, from once it's endorsed, maybe 12 to 18 months to get that properly. And some of the other initiatives as well with compliance and enforcement priorities to grow that part of the business and keep engaging and keep talking to you through events like this and ongoing out of session as well. And that's it.